Good evening, everyone. My name is Eleni. I will, like Charlotte, talk from my own perspective, talk from my experience as a first-time team lead and how what I did or what I didn't do at first to create psychological safety, but also how my own flaws, my own personal flaws, my own personal beliefs, limiting beliefs, impacted the amount of safety that my team felt. Because like Nele told in the beginning, there's a big difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it. And I knew a lot about psychological safety when I became a team lead, but still applying it or trying to create it in the team was a whole different story. You will fail. What emotion does this evoke when I tell you this? See someone doing this? Anxiety, yeah. For me, it triggers both a bit of anxiety, but also this reaction. I instantly think I need to prove myself. And I remember a moment when I was back in high school, so we go a few years back, a lot of years back. And I remember being in class, in French class. It was the beginning of the school year, we had a new teacher, and my friend who was sitting next to me, she asked me a question. So we started whispering a little bit during class. And of course, what happens when you do this? The teacher called me out. And he told me, Eleni, if you don't start paying attention, you will fail drastically. And this, I have never been so motivated as at that point to study very, very hard for my exam. And I got one of the best grades that year for French class. So because he told me this, I instantly felt like this urge to prove myself, to study super hard because I did not want to fail. And I think every single one of you can think of a similar example because at school, we have always been taught that failing is a bad thing. There are only two options, either you're right or you're wrong. And when you're wrong, you're being punished for it. And this will, in our later lives, often also have an impact on how safe we feel, how psychologically safe we feel to talk about mistakes, to fail as well, and to admit when we don't know something. Where did I point to? Aha. Wat? Can I? Yeah. So fast forward to a couple of years later when I started working. I started working at Proximus, so a bigger corporate, tech corporate. And I started there as a management trainee with a bunch of other people. And one of the first things that we were taught was that our network within the company and our visibility would determine for a big part our success within the company. So it would determine, because it's such a big company, it would determine how many opportunities we would get. It would determine for a big part how fast we would get promoted, how fast we would climb the corporate ladder, you know, all the things you think are important when you start working in a corporate. So from the beginning, I knew that I didn't only have to work hard or do great at work, I also needed to show I was doing great at work. And all of this reinforced my belief that failing was a bad thing. Because if people would see that I was failing, I knew it would impact my career. It would impact the opportunities that I would get to grow, to develop myself, and to get promoted. Again, fast forward to a couple of years later, when I got my first job as a team lead. And as you can see, I was relatively young compared to many of my other direct colleagues. So I instantly, I got promoted to this position, and it was a completely new context, a bit like in Charlotte's case. Completely new context, all new people that I started leading, completely new department that I had never worked in before. So I knew that people would doubt me. because I was new, because it was my first experience as a team lead, and because I was relatively young. And this was also something that some colleagues even told me. They told me, like, Eleni, I know you can do it, but know that others will be doubting you and that you will have to prove yourself. So what did I do? From the start, the first couple of months, I did everything in my power to try to prove myself. I thought, or I wanted to show that I was as perfect as I could be, that I had it all figured out, that I had all the answers, in order to prove to people that I was worth being at that position. And I think that, or this is something that I actually see today when I work with first-time leaders as well, that a lot of them have this feeling too, this feeling of needing to prove themselves, needing to prove that they are worth to be in the position that they are. And I also think that a lot of you, even the people who are not in a team lead position, but that a lot of you can relate to this as well whenever you are or have been in a position where you're an example to others, where you're responsible for others, be it as a founder, a team lead, a mom, a dad, an older sibling maybe. But whenever you're in a position like that, at some point you feel that you need to be perfect, that you need to be the good example, that you can't make too much mistakes because you're an example for others. And this was something that was very present for me as well. My fear of being judged by others and my fear of failure, I quickly noticed that it started to have an impact in my team as well, or on my team. And I noticed that it had an impact on how psychologically safe they were feeling as well. And how did I see this? I noticed the lack of psychological safety in my team, or it showed itself by the fact that they were very, very afraid to take action or take a decision. Because they were super afraid that if they took a decision or if they took an action, that they would fail and that people would judge them. And this is when I learned that your team is actually one of your best, in the business context, one of the best mirrors that you can have. If something is going wrong in your team, there's a big chance that it has something to do with your own behavior as a leader. This is the shadow of the leader we have been talking about earlier. So there's a big chance that it has something to do with your own beliefs, your own behavior. And this is what I saw as well. So my team was so afraid of failing when they would take an action or when they would take a decision because I had this fear of being judged and fear of failure myself. And I saw this, or how did I see this in the workspace? I noticed this because my team kept going in circles and circles and kept discussing and philosophizing before they dared to take a decision. They kept involving all the people that they could get just to get the approval of their colleagues. So as you can imagine, it slowed us down immensely as a team. Nothing happened. People were afraid to speak up, and we didn't get the results that we should have. And I also noticed in my team that not everyone was feeling as safe as I wanted them to. I'm gonna leave this for later. Oops. So what did I do? I wanted to turn all of this around. And I tried multiple things, but there were two things that actually had a big impact on the increase of psychological safety in the team. The first is I stopped trying to be perfect. I admitted that I didn't know it all. I admitted that I didn't have all the answers. I tried to lean into the position of a leader more and try to be there for them, to support them, to guide them, but not to come up with all the answers. So I dared to rely on my team as well, to ask questions to my team, to make sure that I opened up about my own struggles, about the things that I didn't know. And I very quickly saw that my team as well, that they started opening up more towards each other, that they started asking help to their colleagues, that they started admitting when they were stuck and sharing all of these things in our team meetings. So because of me, taking action and stop to try to be perfect, I noticed that my team did the same, and that they also felt this relief, like, okay, we don't need to be perfect. We can make mistakes. We can ask questions to one another and ask for help to one another. So this was the first thing. The second thing I did was I started framing actions and decisions as experiments. And it had an immense impact because it helped taking actions and decisions, it helped them feel more safe about actions and decisions they were taking. Because they weren't final, they weren't these huge things, they were just experiments. And experiments could work, and then we would continue to do them. Or they could not work, but then we would just, okay, it was just an experiment and we learned something from it. So I repeated this, I think in the beginning I repeated this like at least 10 times a week. Like, let's just experiment, guys. Like, what experiment can we start? What small action can we take, and how can we experiment with this? Like, I kept saying it and saying it and saying it, and it had an immense effect on the team. They really started to take action. They came with these crazy ideas even to try some new things out, to innovate, all because they felt safe enough, because it wasn't a final decision. It was just something that we were trying out, and after a couple of days, a couple of weeks, we would be able to determine if it worked or not. So I stopped being perfect, and I started talking about experimenting instead of big decisions and big actions. Those were the two things for me that really helped me to increase this amount of psychological safety in my team. And if there's one message that I want you all to remember, or one tip at least from my own experience that I want you to take away, is that your team does not need a know-it-all leader. They need someone who is able to show their vulnerability and who they can open up to and feel safe with or feel supported by whenever they need someone. Voilà. And I wanted to leave this here as well, as an end note. Any questions?